Does anybody?
I do.
Dick?
After,
Oh,
I
wait,
mean, you want staff first?
Staff first? Staff, no? Okay, Dick?
Yeah, I'm going to make some comments, and I appreciate, I know we like to get out here, I appreciate my colleagues' patience. I want to make some comments about John's, Councilmember Fricke's email that went out accusing Nora and Ken and myself of breaking a promise to the community from the meeting back in September. And I've deliberately waited till the end of this meeting to do that, when there would be less people in the audience, because I don't, even though I know we're still on TV, I don't know that there's that many people watching. So I want to get, while I want to get this on the record, I didn't want to necessarily air my version of dirty laundry in front of a lot of people that don't necessarily need to hear it. So I just want to say, John, that I've been bothered for a long time. I'm not on your email list, but a lot of them make their way to me. And I've been bothered for a long time by what I think is you taking a lot of liberties in your emails in general about not being very balanced. And it's great to be an advocate for a position, but when information's put out that I think is not very balanced, I think the fair thing to do is you put out the information and then argue your point, rather than only putting out one side of things, is my view of a responsibility as a public servant. But I've let it go and haven't said much. I compliment you on being a great communicator. I mean, you really work hard at it, and you really get out there. And I guess it's time for me to figure out how to get out of the Stone Age so that I can respond appropriately. But I'm specifically making a mention of this subject matter because I feel that with that allegation that you crossed a line. It's one, I think what would have been fair in your email would be to argue that this issue came up, 3 council members voted for it, this is the reasons I think that they're wrong, and I urge you to contact your council members to change their vote. I think that's total fair comment and responsible comment. But when you up the ante on it and then claim that there's been a broken promise, it sort of adds a tone to the whole thing that I noticed in Ken's response he picked up on, because that's like waving a red flag in front of people. Oh my gosh, we've got council members breaking promises, that's awful, without even looking at the substance of what's there. And when you put out only part of the story, it's going to lead to those kinds of conclusions, and I think it creates a lot of angst among voters. I think it creates a lot of misinformation in the community, and I think that's not responsible action by a council member. So with that general thing, I just want to talk about the broken promise is supposedly, this all has to do with the street widening issues around around the 4 major projects. And whether, specifically that's what you seem to focus on, and that we were supposed to wait until we had the Nelson-Nygaard complete study. And so that's supposedly the promise that we made. We'd wait until we had the complete study. Well, the question is, do we have the complete study? There is a portion, part 1 of their study, which they initially started on, was to do a study of the analysis of AC transit, Emeryville go-round, how to better serve people, alternative means of transportation. And we stopped them on that because these major 4 projects have started coming forward, and we wanted to get another look at the Fair Piers, Kimberly Horn transportation suggestions. And so we started taking a look at that. So we pulled them off of that and said this is a higher priority. We can get back to that. So it's not sidetracking, as the word that you used, to me to be kind of a negative connotation, but in any case, we held that up until they did this other part on bike pedestrians and their view as to how those other studies impacted that. So now we got that, and that's the critical piece for me. Staff then looked at that and came forward, because in their minds, and I've talked to Pat about this, their belief is that the alternative study is not going to dramatically change the intersection issues and the street widening issues, and that we already have that analyzed. Otherwise, they would have waited for this part 1, which we, quote, sidetracked, to come around. And it's not that it's not important, it's not that it doesn't fit into the whole picture, but it's not likely to change dramatically what we're going to do at these streets and intersections. So that was ready to come forward, in my opinion. I know that you disagree. And so I don't think we broke a promise. We waited for the critical part of the Nelson Nygaard study to come forward. Staff fully vetted that. They had a very comprehensive slideshow and discussion that took place here, and they made recommendations for voting, and a majority of us saw it as staff saw it, and we said, let's move forward. So I think to characterize that as a broken promise is just adding fuel to a fire and trying to create the very kind of animosity that we saw expressed in your advocacy. I think that, you know, if back before you got on the council, you were a community advocate, and I think in those situations, it's totally fine to be dogmatic and uncompromising and say, you know, this is what I want, this is what I'm pushing for, and I don't care if there's other arguments. My personal belief is that when you're an elected official, even though you may be passionate about things, there's some obligation to the voters to not put out what I believe in this situation is a half-truth. And the flip side of a half-truth is a half-lie. And whether we characterize it as that or not, and maybe it's not that significant, because technically, I guess, you're right, we didn't have both parts of the Nelson Nygaard study, but did we have the critical one? I think that 3 of us believed that we did. So I think at least it is intentional misrepresentation on your part to try to fan the flames. And, you know, and if we really look at the widening issue, if we go to the substance of it, I mean, let's get past all that. Look at how little we're really talking about widening in the whole city, even if we do that, and we haven't taken a vote to do that yet. So it puts out the idea, I mean, I've had people talk to me, oh my gosh, how are you going to widen all these streets? Well, they don't know what streets we're talking about widening. Most people just don't know. So they take it that this idea that, oh my gosh, we've got people breaking promises. I mean, some of the emails thought we broke campaign promises. They didn't even understand what promises you're talking about. I don't think that that's fair comment. I don't think it's appropriate comment, and I wish that you would take a look at the way you advocate and not always take that extra step to go for the jugular and try to be more balanced in being a responsible elected official to the whole city of Emeryville, whether people agree with you or disagree with you, to not put out half-truths and misinformation, as I believe you did here. So I'm sorry that that went out, and I intend to do my best to communicate with all these people. I think I've seen 30 so far. I know Nora and Ken are doing that, but I said to you before the meeting personally that I was very upset by the actions that you took. Again, I believe that compared to a lot of these others in the past, you stepped over a line. I'm not happy with that. I wanted you to know that personally, and I wanted to say publicly the reasons why I'm upset with your actions. And I think it's a real unfortunate situation.
I stand by my message. I stand by all my messages. I put all my messages, all my broadcast messages on my website, and I invite people to comment on them, but I do stand by them. I'm happy to put you on my email list. You've said in the past that you don't check email, but you know, if you give me an email address, I'll put it on. I encourage you to join us in the 21st century, and you can respond to my comment, to my email messages. You can email people yourself. That's what public discourse is about.
You're right.
Public discourse is occurring now through many media, including email, and that's, you know, that's. And like I said at the beginning of this meeting to you privately, you're entitled to your opinion, and I'll fight to the death for you to express your opinion in whatever medium, including email. But I encourage you to do that. We haven't gotten the alternative transportation study. I disagree. I would not belittle that study. I expect that that's going to provide a lot of detail that will illuminate policy decisions, and we should wait for that study before we make fundamental policy decisions about how people get around in the city.
With that, meeting is adjourned.